Let's talk about the running backs. The guys at the top of our rankings, we have Alvin Kamara, Ezekiel Elliott, Aaron Jones. Jeff, who would you be putting in the top three?
I've got Kamara and Jones in there, but I don't have Zeke in the top three. Instead, I've got Mike Davis. Mike Davis is a guy that I wasn't so sure about in the beginning there, but after about a game and a half of seeing him perform, I'm going, all right. Apparently, I'm wrong about Mike Davis. So, really high on him, and I think that he deserves consideration in the top three, as crazy as that sounds.
No, I mean, I can buy it. I mean, I think there are, maybe 5 or 6 guys that you could make an argument for to be in the top three this week. Uh, Outside of Mike Davis, who's someone else that you think you are relatively high on?
So this, I'm almost positive is going to be a hot take, but Clyde Edwards Helaire, I would say, is a guy that I'm going to be higher on relative to the field. I think that everyone's expecting a big decrease in production from him, and even like the sites responded with it seems like a too low of a price here, 6,100 for him on DraftKings. But Le'Veon Bell, I think, is more so going to affect Darrell Williams than Clyde Edwards-Helaire, at least in the very beginning here, talking about working him in for the first game. And no one's going to want to touch that situation. I think he's going to project very similarly to as if Le'Veon Bell had never signed. So he's one. And then Deandre Swift is a guy that I got lucky and said, man, I bet you this guy's going to win someone the Millie Maker this week. And sure enough, at 4% owned, he won someone the Millie Maker. I think it's just one thing you should keep an eye on as you're projecting teams coming off bye weeks are guys that would seemingly be more involved with, especially rookies. We're seeing this right now with Tua being named the starting quarterback for the Dolphins. Like they're obviously trying to work in their rookie there, and quarterback's the most important to like have the extra week, but it just seems so obvious that the running back position there for the Lions, let's work in DeAndre Swift more. He's the guy that Kieran Johnson said, like, I can't do the things that DeAndre Swift does. Like the running backs there know that he's the best running back. The coaches know he's the best running back. Why isn't he involved? They might have just needed that extra week. So he's getting about 50% of the work now. I think that continues moving forward, and he's still really cheap. He's in a great matchup. So DeAndre Swift would be the other guy.
Sean, I'm kicking it to you. Who are you relatively high on?
So for the higher price guys, I'm high on Aaron Jones. He's 7,200 this week, but I think he should have a bounce back game. He's coming off a matchup against Tampa Bay, who, even without Vita Vea, should be one of the stingier run defenses the rest of the season. Now he gets Houston, who has been one of the worst run defenses. They've allowed 4 different running backs to top 100 yards this year, including Derrick Henry's 200-yard game last week. Even against the Ravens, they allowed 4 different ball carriers to top 50 yards. I think it's just a set up for a ceiling spot for Aaron Jones, so I should have decent amount of shares on him. And then one of the cheaper guys, it's a little early in the week to be really loading up on him, but Michael Hastie at 4,200. He should probably be owned in all leagues just to see how this shapes out. Again, when it comes to the 49ers, running game, we're really investing in the Kyle Shanahan system, not really the players. So he has a chance to be this year's Raheem Moser. Now that Raheem Moser, ironically, is on the IR, and Tevin Coleman, I don't think is expected to be back anytime soon. So, it's worth taking a flyer in Hasty. And, later in the week, hopefully we'll have a better idea on the situation. But he's nearly 2K cheaper than Jerick McKinnon. In these situations, I do like to go with the guy that people might be overlooking. So I'll have a decent amount of shares of Michael Hasty this week.
Raybon, who do you like?
I didn't think we'd be here, but Todd Gurley. I love Todd Gurley this week. Have him as a top 10 back. He's only 6K going against the Lions and their awful run defense. They've given up the 6th most half PPR points to opposing backs. Gurley's he's carrying the load. He had 20 carries last week. Didn't go for much yardage in that game, but new coaching staff, he gets 20 carries. I think that was a positive sign. And now you're at home as a home favorite against a bad run defense in a game with a high total. I mean, this is a multi-touchdown smash spot for Todd Gurley.
All right. One guy I am high on, and granted, this is early in the week, so we don't know exactly what's going to happen with Leonard Fournette, but assuming that Fournette is out and or limited, even if he returns, I think it's a situation where Ronald Jones is still going to keep the lead back role based on what he's done the past 3 weeks. Now, granted, we all know that he's one of the worst starting backs in the league when it comes to catching the ball. It's just amazing how inefficient he is at turning targets into yards. So that is something that limits his upside. But his rushing production has been, among the best in the league, especially over the last 3 weeks. And Fournette, I don't know if he really could have done any better than what we've seen out of Ronald Jones. And in Fournette's absence, we've seen Jones establish at least, I wouldn't say some sort of like rapport with Tom Brady, but at least like a level of trust where they know what they can get out of Ronald Jones at this point. So I am, I would say kind of surprised that Jones is popping so high in my rankings. I have him number 7 right now, assuming that we're not going to see that much out of Fournette. So I'll be looking at the practice reports. If we see Fournette practicing in full on Wednesday or Thursday, then I'm going to bump the rankings down. But assuming that Fournette is out or limited, Jones is going to be someone I'm pretty invested in. Jeff, who are you low on?
So guys that I'm low on, Kenyon Drake is one, and this is coming off the game yesterday where he just had 130, 140 yards or something. So I feel like the recency bias might kick in for people, and they're ready to kind of hop back on him, especially high scoring environment and everything against Seattle. It seems like a spot that people are going to want to look at too. And he's priced cheaper than Chase Edmonds, I think. I'm pretty sure I saw on DraftKings. But the problem is, I don't really think he showed that much in that game last night. He looked the same to me, where all season he's had a hard time getting around the edges. Even when they're force feeding the ball to get him into the end zone, a lot of times he's failing. I think he scored a 1-yard touchdown this game. And then that last run, I mean, the Dallas defense was already checked out. That should not even count for anything as we're looking at how well he played that game. So Drake would be a guy I'm low on. And then James Robinson, to kind of go with the theme of really buying into that Chargers defense and thinking that Jaguars offense is going to struggle. Of course, the results have kind of come back down to earth a little bit for James Robinson, especially on the run side of things, where he averaged 2.4 yards per carry against Detroit and 3.7 against Houston. Whereas before, earlier in the season, he was just dominating. So much lower on James Robinson and Kenyon Drake than the field, I think.
Sean, who are you low on?
I'm low on Derrick Henry this week. I have him all the way down to running back 6. So, I mean, if you're in season-long leagues, you're starting him no matter what. And I think if we were to do a redraft today, I'd probably take him number 1 overall. But, like I mentioned, he's coming off, the 200-yard game against the Texans, who have struggled mightily against running backs this year. And now he faces the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are first in DVOA against the run. The loss of Devin Bush should hurt, but it's not like I'm, regressing this defense to average all of a sudden. So I think just given the spot at 7,500 coming off a huge game, I think he'll be over-owned. And I'm just hoping the Steelers defense can hold him to like 100 yards and a touchdown. And he's always limited in the passing game. So I think his ceiling is a little bit lower this week. And then also I'm low on Jerick McKinnon at 5,800. It kind of goes with what I was saying with Michael Hastie. I think just because Raheem Moser is out, we can't just assume Jerick McKinnon's going to become the workhorse back we saw a couple weeks ago. I think Hastie and McKinnon will probably split carries, but this is a situation where I rather go with the back that's $2K cheaper just because there's so much uncertainty. And I think Hastie will be under-owned this week. So that means I'm pretty much fading McKinnon. Again, it's early in the week. I could change my mind come Saturday if we hear more about the situation. But as of now, I'm leaning Hastie.
Raymond, who are you fading?
All of the San Francisco backs and all of the New England backs. Both of these teams are top 5 in fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. And as Sean kind of alluded to, we don't know what the heck's going on in San Francisco. Jeff Wilson may lead them in carries this week. Maybe Kyle Juszczyk will just play single back in the shotgun all day. Like he was getting deep targets last week. Like we have no idea what's going to happen. So like I don't even think that it's wise to take a stand in this case. I think we just admit that, hey, it could go one of like 3 or 4 ways in that backfield. It's not a great matchup. They're going across the country, coming off a big win, super letdown spot for San Fran. And on the other side, New England, it's San Francisco is actually allowed the least points to running backs. And you never know kind of what you're going to get these days out of this New England offense. You're going to get a lot of Cam Newton runs, but is it going to be Burkhead? Is it going to be Harris? It depends on the script. James White might catch a lot, but if they're running, it's a tough matchup. I just want no parts of either that game, except for, as you mentioned, Friedman, Cam Newton.
All right. The guy I'm relatively low on is Ezekiel Elliott. I was low on him last week, and a lot of the logic was I don't think he's going to have the opportunities to score touchdowns. And that's very much what we saw. He did get targets, but I don't think we can count on him getting 11 targets again this upcoming game. We're looking at a run offense that I think is pretty anemic without the offensive line that has really powered that running game for the past half decade or so. In an offense that, with Andy Dalton under center, the TCU days were wonderful. We'll always have that Rose Bowl victory in 2010, but Andy Dalton is not going to be bringing glory to the Dallas-Fort Worth area in the 2020 season. So I'm not expecting an offense that is going to provide opportunities for touchdowns to Ezekiel Elliott. I think it's just going to be pretty bad all the way around. If he gets there, I think it's going to be through massive target volume, but that's just, I think, pretty hard to predict or project for a running back. So, I still have him number 5. It's not as if that's like horrible or anything, but I don't think he belongs in the top 3 for sure. Okay, Sean, give us the prop.
We're going to have to go with Le'Veon Bell, total rushing and receiving yards. And this is an absolutely impossible line for me to set, so I'm just going to throw it out there. 40.5.
I guess I'll go first. So I haven't dug into this enough to have a super strong read on the median projection for Le'Veon Bell, but I would still lean under. Of course, you heard me talk about being high on CEH and thinking that Le'Veon's more likely to be in the Darrell Williams role, and if he is in that role, then it's got to be the under.
Yeah, I'm going under as well. I'm still conservative projecting him for around 6 to 7 touches. Maybe that's super low, but especially after Clyde Edwards-Helaire showed out last week, I just don't think you give Le'Veon Bell 10 to 15 touches unless you run 46 times again. But remember, this is the Chiefs. They come off a game where they lose and they felt like they threw too much and they've been throwing downfield too much. And so what do? They go short and they run the ball more than Andy Reid has ever run. Now the Broncos had a week to kind of ingest that, take that in. What do you think is going to happen this week? They'll probably throw it deep all day. So I'm going conservative with Bell.
Sean, I had to do some quick math on the question of combined yardage, but yeah, I will barely take the over. You said 40.5. I have it at 42. So, pretty much right there with you in terms of where you've set the line. I guess I'm probably being a little more aggressive in terms of the usage that I think Bell is going to get, particularly as a pass catcher. I think he will eat into Edwards-Helaire just a little bit because Edwards-Helaire has been really good as a runner. I think much better than anyone would have anticipated and not nearly as good of a receiver as we would have expected when he entered the league, which is, something that was just mind blowing. Like he was great as a pass catching back in college and we haven't seen that at all in the NFL. And I think that's the one area where Bell probably still really can outproduce and make an immediate contribution. So if Bell is used in the receiving game, I think it makes it a little bit easier for him to hit this number with even just a few targets.
That's a good point, Friedman, because Edwards-Helaire made a horrible play at the end of that Buffalo game where they were trying to run it down to the 2-minute warning, and they shouldn't have been throwing, but they throw him like a little screen, and he like has like a whole bunch of blocks, and he just decides to take it outside and goes out of bounds and stops the clock at like 2:19 when they were just trying to run it down. So I could definitely see him, getting less usage in the pass game.